Good afternoon. This is Ken Long with an thought experiment in visualization, leadership, and revolutionary new environments. We have here a conventional array of the elements of combat power, which consist of the warfighting functions of fires, maneuver, command and control, force protection, sustainment, intelligence, tied together by leadership, and operating in an information environment. Now let's suppose that this represents the skill sets of our commanders and staff officers. And we could represent the commander's knowledge map, a maneuver commander, for example, in the red shaded area. He's a maneuver commander, and so his depth of knowledge is large, and he has a working knowledge of all of the other warfighting functions. He's especially strong in intelligence and command and control. At the same time, we might array his sustainment staff officers, the staff that advises him on sustainment, in the following way. They also have a working knowledge of the other warfighting functions, not to the extent the commander has because of his seniority and experience, but they are extremely proficient in the area of sustainment. So the commander has staff in each one of these areas to advise him. Now, when we merge these together into a command post, we might see something that looks like this: an overlay of areas of the commander's skills and his staff's. In this case, we can see some evidence that the sustainers know things about sustainment that he doesn't know, but also things in the area of force protection due to their mission requirements for convoys in the rear area. They may have some insights into force protection that actually go beyond what the commander does. Again, the blue shaded areas now are areas where the staff expertise and knowledge exceeds that of the commander's knowledge. And this is not surprising. This is by design. This is why we have staff, so that the commander gets informed. Under routine circumstances, under normal conditions, the commander's critical information requirements, or CCIR, describe what the commander needs to know from the staff. In the planning process, under conventional operations, the commander knows what else he needs to know before he completes his vision and decides on his concept of operation, so that he can ask now the staff for specific information requirements. They answer him, and then he can complete his plan. It's fair to then ask ourselves, what happens under conditions of uncertainty and revolutionary change, when the commander's experience no longer is an effective guide to the current and future circumstances? How useful is that? What has to change in the commander's staff and subordinate commander relationship when that occurs? Now let's suppose that we have an array of an officer corps that looks something like this, that we have ranks from second lieutenant through first lieutenant, captain, major, lieutenant colonel, all the way up to general, and that in our hierarchy, that the number of general officers is few, and as you go to lower ranks, you start getting an increase in number. You start getting many, and the years of experience vary, so that we have few generals with many years of experience, and we have many second lieutenants with few years of experience. It's also safe to say that there have been periods of war and peace throughout our careers where we experienced formative emotional events, where we have crystallized the lessons that we never forget. It's fair to ask ourselves, which one of these dominate our worldview now? How do we bring those forward and shape our vision of what's going on? So let's suppose that now that we have a commander, a senior commander, but really any commander, has marched up the career path, and now he's in a position in the present where he is in command. His past has shaped his present and his vision of the future as a function of his education, experience, his reflective learning, and the emotional events that crystallized for him. He's now in the present, and it's fair for us to ask, how much like the past is the present, and will the future be like the past? If we believe that we're in periods of revolutionary change, it may be that the experience and frame of reference that the commander has from his past actually prevents him from seeing ground truth. The green line represents a static present, and future, in which they are very much like our past experience. In that case, the commander can see far. He can see above him and below him, touching the ground truth, and he is able to be directive based on his experience, and the staff can simply support him by answering his questions. Under periods of evolutionary change, the commander may not be able to see as far because things are changing, and the staff has to be a little more proactive, anticipating what the commander will need. Under periods of revolutionary change, though, the present and the future may be so unlike what the commander has experienced that his experience actually gets in the way. It prevents him from seeing what's going on in the ground truth. And under those conditions, the subordinate commanders and the supporting staff who are closer to the ground truth have to take on a revolutionary change in their relationship with the commander. This is what I think. Under conventional times, we can say the commander is the most experienced and senior officer. His experience is directly relevant to the situation. He knows what else he needs to know from the staff to complete that vision and concept, and then by exception, the staff may elect to bring things to his attention based on their marginal improvement in knowledge. The staff reports the needed information to the commander. The commander is seen as smart and experienced, a wise man, the final authority, and the director of operations. We look to him for certainty as members of his staff, and we would consider his confusion or not knowing to be a sign of weakness and an area of great concern. But if you believe there is a revolution going on in the nature of operations, that these are exceptional times, we would then tend to believe that situations are new, dynamic, unique, and evolving, that experience is not directly applicable and may actually be harmful if it deviates very much from the future. It could constrain us or confine us or even blind us to what's going on. The commander doesn't know what he needs to know now because his frame of reference does not fit or it is unformed. And the subordinate staff and subordinate commanders now, who are closer to the situation, who have more direct exposure and experience, must push their vision and interpretation and their framing of the problem to the higher commander to shape his vision. He must actively seek and encourage their input to drive the collaborative process of team learning. He must be open and emotionally vulnerable now to share the limitations of his knowledge because he's dealing with a rank hierarchy and a culture of obedience where this is not a natural relationship between commanders and junior staff. He must have solid values so that we can rely on him, but he must be transparent and be ready to perform the role of final judge and ratifier of the group learning and team-based learning process. He must be wise and not necessarily smart. He must be open and questioning, not clear and decisive, until it's time for action. This places a premium on our commanders for intellectual humility, a commitment to inquiry, and the empowerment and education of subordinates. He must be willing to be the least informed guy in the room and the best critical thinker so that he can integrate the input from his staff and commanders. He must have an empathetic and loyal staff who support his vulnerability, and the staff must be comfortable with the commander being vulnerable and uncertain. And so now the question for educators is, if you believe we're inside a revolutionary shift in battlefield requirements, how do we live and educate to these new ideas? How much of a transition would this shift in perspective and culture represent to our warrior profession? And how would you go about leading the transition? Are you doing it now? Are you prepared to do it now? And if not, when will you? Thanks for your attention.